Welcome back, everyone. So, in the last video, you were given an outline regarding the topics clay mineralogy and the reason behind the charged surface of clay particles, and also on the different clay water interaction mechanisms that are possible. Okay, so today we will look into the soil water contaminant interactions which are prevailing in our environment. So now let's look into what soil water contaminant interactions are. Now, see, there are various possible ways in which contaminants or pollutants, which are harmful for both environment as well as all forms of life, will be released into your ecosystem. Okay, so it could be due to naturally occurring hazards, or it could be due to human activities. But whichever way it is, there is some way or the other way the pollutants get released into your environment. Okay, so once it gets released into environment, it is important for us, especially for a geo-environmental engineer, to keep tab on what is happening to the contaminants once it is released into a particular environment. Okay, so there are various ways, as I said, by which the contaminants can be released into environment. It can be due to some hazards which can occur, eventually due to which there will be release of contaminants into your environment, or it could be due to deposition of waste over land, and over a period of time this there will be leachates formed out of these waste deposits, and this leachates would carry all possible pollutants that they have collected from the waste mix, and this leachate will start percolating into your subsoil below. Okay, so in that way also your contaminants come in contact with the soil. Okay, so here I'll be talking in particular about the environment, that is soil. Okay, so here soil is our substrate with which our contaminants are going to have various interactions or mechanisms. So there are ways in which contaminants can get released into your water bodies as well. So we'll be discussing in particular about the interaction mechanisms that happens between the soil and the contaminants. That is, once the contaminants are released into your soil, what are the different possible reactions that can occur. Okay, now the presence of water in soil will actually help in the easy transport of contaminants within the soil structure. Okay, imagine if it's a dry soil with no water, will not be that easier for any material to percolate through the soil. Okay, whereas if the soil contains water, that water will act as a medium for something to flow through it, right? It becomes easier for any foreign material to pass through the or percolate through the soil structure if it is a saturated soil. Okay, so basically what happens is that imagine a waste deposit. So as I said, if a waste deposit is being kept on a land for over a period of time, then leachates will be formed out of those waste materials, and these leachates will start percolating into your soil below, which is your environment here, which we are talking about. Okay, now once these leachates will travel through the soil structure, there are various possible reactions that can occur. Okay, depending upon the contaminants present in the leachate. Okay, and so basically fate of contaminants in soil actually describes that life cycle of the contaminants once it is released into any environment. So here the environment which we are talking about is the soil environment. Okay, so here we'll be discussing in particular about the life cycle of contaminants. That is what really happens to a contaminant once it is released into soil. Okay, so it is mainly decided by the retention and transport of contaminants. See, what happens is that this pore water present in the soil. So as I said, water acts as a medium, right? So it will carry all the contaminants which are released into the soil. So this pore water carries the contaminants through the soil structure. And what really happens is the various mechanisms or interaction takes place, due to which either the contaminants will get attenuated. That means, its movement will be restricted somehow due to some reactions, or it will start flowing, I mean it will continue flowing along with the pore water with which it came. Okay, so either it can be retained within that particular location, or it can get transported through the pore water itself. And eventually what happens, once if it is released into soil, uh, it eventually through the soil, the contaminants will join the aquifers. Okay, and that can pollute our water sources. Okay, so we have to find out how far these contaminants can travel, or what is the nature of these contaminants, or how is their distribution going to be within the soil. Okay, so that is why it is important for us to know what will be or how will be the life cycle of the contaminants once it is released into a particular environment. Okay, so basically that life cycle of the contaminants within the soil environment will depend upon the various mechanisms between the pollutants and the soil fractions, and also between the pollutants and the other dissolved solutes present in pore water. Okay, so actually this fate, as I said, fate of contaminants simply indicates the life cycle of the contaminants. Okay, so so throughout the life cycle of a particular contaminant, various interactions will happen between the soil, water and the contaminant. Okay, or soil and the contaminant in the presence of water. Okay, so actually within the soil there will be pore water which will be carrying these contaminants. So there are actually we have grouped the different events that happens throughout the life cycle of the contaminants into four main categories. Okay, so the four different events coming under the life cycle of contaminants are persistence, accumulation, transport and disappearance. Now, persistence of a contaminant, it actually refers to a contaminant which will remain in the substrate environment itself. That is, here our environment or our substrate is the soil. Okay, so the contaminant will either remain in that soil itself, either in its original form, or it can be in a transformed state, because as it passes through the soil, there can be various reactions that can be happening, and due to which it can get transformed to another state. So persistence actually implies that the contaminant, whichever contaminant is released into soil, it can actually remain within the substrate itself, either in its original form or in a transformed state. Okay, and whichever way it is, it will definitely pose an immediate or a potential threat to human health and environment. So that is what is called as persistence. Okay, or a contaminant being persistent. Now, next event that can possibly occur is accumulation. Now, accumulation actually describes those processes involved in the removal of contaminant solutes from the solution. Okay, so this pore water which carries the contaminants through the soil structure, obviously it will undergo many reactions or interaction mechanisms with the soil. Okay, due to which due to some interaction mechanisms, the contaminants will be removed, okay, from the solution. Okay, that is, the contaminant solutes will be removed from this pore water solution somehow due to some processes. Okay, so it can be processes like adsorption, retention, precipitation or complexation. There are various processes. Okay, but accumulation simply refers to those processes which will cause the removal of contaminants from the pore water somehow, or you can call it as the removal of that particular solute, harmful solute. Here in this case, we are talking about the contaminant or the pollutant. Okay, so removal of that particular pollutant from the pore water, that is what accumulation refers to. Okay, and the next form of event that can take place once a contaminant is released into your environment is transport of contaminants. That is, the contaminants will continue to move along with the pore water through your soil substrate, that is your environment. And through during the transport of the contaminants, there are various possible mechanisms can take place, like advection, diffusion, dispersion. So these are some of the mechanisms that can take place throughout the transport process of the contaminants through the substrate. Okay. Then the fourth form of event that can take place is disappearance. Okay, so finally, due to some reactions, the contaminants itself has disappeared from your soil substrate or from your environment somehow. See, we may not know. So basically, disappearance refers to that final elimination of the contaminants due to some uh, mechanisms or reactions. Okay, so these are actually the four main type of events that can take place once the contaminants are released into your soil environment. Okay, so we can actually group this soil water contaminant interactions um, into many processes. Okay, so here we have grouped it into three. The first form of mechanisms involve the chemical mass transfer, that is between the soil and the contaminants, and the attenuation of the contaminants. Attenuation basically refers to that retardation of contaminants within the substrate. Okay, so the various mechanisms which involves chemical mass transfer and attenuation are sorption, dissolution or precipitation, then acid base reaction, then redox reactions, then hydrolysis, complexation, speciation. So these are the different mechanisms which are possible between the soil water contaminant. Okay, which involves chemical mass transfer between the soil and contaminant. Now, other than that, there are some mechanisms which happens during the transport of the contaminants, like advection, diffusion, dispersion. Okay, and other than that, the other form of interactions which can takes place are biological transformations and radioactive decay. Okay, so overall, these are the different types of mechanisms or interactions which can take place in our soil environment when contaminants come in contact with it. Okay. So now we will see why it is important for us to have a detailed study on fate of contaminants or the life cycle of contaminants, after it is released into a particular environment. Now there are two main reasons for that. First reason is for the prediction of transport and status of pollutants resident in the ground over longer periods of time. Okay, that is when you have contaminants or pollutants released into your soil or your environment, what really happens is that we have to keep a tab on it. We have to see how it is going to get distributed within this environment or soil, and whether it's going to remain immobile in the soil, whether it's going to continue its transport throughout the soil and eventually join the aquifer. So we don't know how the distribution is going to be. So we have to understand how for a particular contaminant the life cycle is going to be. So this will actually help us in taking many decisions related to the management of contaminants within that site, so that further it doesn't those contaminants doesn't actually encroach into the uncontaminated spaces. So and we can also evaluate the risk posed by several contaminants, whether whether any contaminant continue to pose a threat to environment or life, or whether it doesn't pose a threat. So we have to evaluate all these questions related to the various risk and risk managements. So for that, it is important for us to predict the status of a particular contaminant within the environment into which it has been released. Okay, so we need to know about their nature, their distribution within the environment. So now when I say longer periods of time, it can be from ranging from 25 years to even 250 years also. So we have to have a detailed study on the life cycle. Then only we will be able to come up with a proper management solution for a particular contaminant. Okay, And obviously then only you will be, if you're planning to construct a waste disposal facility, then depending upon the type of contaminants which you can come across, you can decide on the design, specification, construction and management of a proper containment system. Okay. And so all those things can be done, and even you can come up with a proper solution or remediation of that contaminated site, how to further reduce the contaminants from traveling into that uncontaminated space. So all these questions can be resolved once you have a detailed study on the fate of contaminants or life cycle of the contaminants. Now another reason is obviously the performance and acceptance criteria established by many regulatory agencies using the natural attenuation capability of soil. Okay, that is either engineered or natural soil substrate barriers. That is, see, sometimes just take the example of a landfill itself. We have seen that to contain the waste which has been disposed over land, what we do is we construct an engineered landfill. Okay, so in the construction we give the waste a liner system as well as a cover system. Okay, so that is the way how we contain the waste. Okay, so when the liner systems are given, it should be of such a material that it doesn't permit anything from within the waste disposal to travel into or leach into the subsoil below. Okay, so that is why we provide a liner system. So mostly these liner system, whichever you choose as a material, it should be impermeable to certain extent, or it should have properties that can restrict the movement of the leachates from the waste deposits into your subsoil below. So that should be the capability of a liner material. Okay, so usually we'll go for natural soil which has that low permeability criteria, or criteria to or capability to retard the movement of contaminants, or we go for engineered soils. So either way we have to, so regulatory agencies have to fix the criteria of the type of soils to be used in the to be used as barrier systems. Okay, whichever, so in order to fix that criteria for such soils, we need to understand what the different contaminants, their life cycle, their various possible interactions, how they're going to get distributed, everything. So that is why a fate of contaminants is that study is necessary to for us to actually come up with a suitable barrier system. Okay, so we can fix some criteria for selecting a suitable barrier system to be given for the pollutant attenuation. Okay. Now, in general, there are many types of pollutants which are possibly seen at contaminated sites. So, let's classify them as inorganic pollutants and organic pollutants. So, under inorganic pollutants, mainly the heavy metals come. Okay, heavy metals like lead, copper, cadmium. So all the heavy metals will come under inorganic pollutants or contaminants, and under organic chemicals you will have compounds like polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons or petroleum hydrocarbons, then benzene, toluene, ethylene and xylene. Okay, so this is to just give an idea about the different types of contaminants which are possibly seen at most of the contaminated sites. So these are the range of contaminants that you have to deal with. Whether you're going for containment facility, whether you are going for remediation purpose, okay, for whichever purpose it is, these are the range of contaminants, either inorganic contaminants or organic contaminants. Okay. Now we'll start with the mechanism of sorption. So as seen earlier, sorption is one of those mass transfer mechanism that happens between the soil and the contaminant. Okay, so here your sorbent is your soil surface and your sorbate is your contaminant or the pollutant which comes along with your pore water. Okay, so what really happens is during the transport process, because of the chemistry between the contaminant and the soil surface, okay, this contaminants or pollutants will get sorbed or attached onto the surface of the soil particle. Okay, so in that way, what is happening? The contaminant concentration is getting reduced in the solution. Okay, because your solution is getting transferred through your soil structure, and during the transport process, sorption is a possible phenomena which can occur, due to which your contaminants are getting attenuated or it is getting arrested within that substrate itself. Okay, so it doesn't join the solution for the further transport through the soil. Okay, it will get attached or sorbed onto the soil surface, so thereby basically the concentration of the contaminants is getting reduced in the solution or pore water as well, right? So whatever due to the process of this sorption. Okay, so here sorption can be either physical sorption or chemical sorption, because there are various types of forces involved due to which this chemistry happens. Okay, so it can be due to a weak bonding or a strong bonding. Okay, now obviously, due to for this option to happen, also the environment prevailing in that soil water should be favorable. Okay, that for that chemistry to happen between the soil surface and the contaminants. Okay, especially one of the primary factors that should be favorable is the pH of the environment. See, certain reactions are very sensitive to the pH. Okay, only at a certain pH level certain reactions will occur. So, some contaminants will react to the soil surface only at a certain pH level. So, thereby pH is an important factor which can govern the reactions, and obviously whatever chemistry between the contaminants and the soil surface, that is also one other important factors, because there will be various cations and anions present in the solution. So, what really happens, that depends upon the chemistry between the soil surface and the pollutants present in the pore water. And then the redox potential, that is redox potential refers to the that potential that is either reduction or oxidation potential of that chemical species. Okay, which the pore water carries. So that chemical species to either lose an electron or an accept an electron. Okay, so that is what is referred to as redox potential. So obviously the redox potential of the chemical species present in the pore water matters, and importantly the soil surface properties. Okay, and that also matters. So these are the different factors which um, which actually brings in the mechanism of sorption, or which actually determines whether the factors are favorable or not favorable for sorption to happen. Okay, so as I said, sorption can be either a physical sorption or it can be a chemical sorption. That is, in physical sorption, what happens is that the bonding will be a very weak bonding between the contaminant and the soil surface. The bonding will be a very weak bonding, like that of van der Waals, and therefore the contaminants are not going to get attached onto the soil surface for longer periods of time. Eventually it will get released from the sorbate. Okay, that is from your eventually the contaminant will get released from your soil surface. Okay, and that can happen, if that is, it is a reversible process. This physical sorption is actually a reversible process. Even if the contaminant gets attached or adsorbed onto your soil surface, because of its weak bonding, it can get detached from the soil surface as well. Okay, and this can be accelerated by using some extracting solution. So if you wash that particular soil with some extracting solutions, this physical sorption can, the contaminants can can be easily released from the soil surface as well. Okay, whereas in chemical sorption, the bond between the contaminant and the soil surface will be much more stronger, and therefore it is mostly termed as an irreversible sorption. Okay, so once the contaminants get attached onto your soil surface, you will not be able to get it detached from the soil surface because of that strong bond of formation between the soil surface and the contaminant. Okay, so these are the two different types of sorption that can take place. Either it can be a reversible sorption or it can be a irreversible sorption. So either way, sorption actually takes place during the transport of the contaminants along with the pore water. Okay, and depending upon the chemistry that exists between the soil surface and the type of ion present in the pore water, the contaminant or the pollutant can get absorbed onto the soil surface. Now, radioactive materials are always a challenge for any geo-environmental engineer, because we know what are the, these are hazardous, these are classified under hazardous materials, and they're extremely dangerous for all forms of life as well as environment. And if further there is, transport of radioactive elements, certain radioactive elements, in fact, like plutonium, cesium and all, they get transported to far off, and they will eventually, join the aquifers and pollute your environment very much. Okay, so radioactive decay is one of the processes that can occur within the soil. Now we have radioactive materials due to, nuclear installations or due to mining activities. So many radioactive materials will be disposed of, and we know that in fact they are disposed of and stored within the soil itself. Okay, and over a period of time, there definitely will be some sort of reactions that are taking place. And these radioactive materials are those materials which, which generates a lot of heat. And during the process, what happens is that the unstable isotopes, they decay to form new ones with the release of even more heat. That is, these are extremely exothermic reactions, and particles from element nucleus. So basically these unstable isotopes will decay to form new ones. Okay, so that process is known as a alpha or a beta decay, depending on whether the element loses alpha particle or whether it loses a beta particle. Okay, so when this unstable isotopes decay to form new one, the new daughter isotopes are formed. Okay, and over a period of time, these reactions increase, and the daughter isotopes, their number also increases in quantity. Okay, so eventually this is one reaction which is not good for our environment, and this is a challenge for most of us on, how to deal with it. Okay, so understand that, this is one of the mechanisms that happens, or one of the processes that happens in soil due to the release of radioactive materials in soil. Okay, that is radioactive decay will happen. Okay, one of the biologically mediated reaction that takes place between the contaminants and soil is what is called as biological transformation. So here the major role is played by microorganisms. Microorganisms like bacteria, algae, fungi, protozoa, viruses. Now these have the capability to assimilate or degrade certain contaminants or pollutants. Okay, not all type of pollutants can be degraded or assimilated by microorganisms, but certain pollutants. Okay, and and like any other biological reaction, mostly this also will take place either under aerobic conditions or under non-aerobic condition. Okay, that is depending upon the presence of oxygen or other electron acceptors like nitrate, sulfate, ion. That particular reaction would take place under aerobic or anaerobic conditions. Okay, and when that is under aerobic or anaerobic condition, a particular contaminant will be degraded by the microorganisms. Okay, and due to that reaction, there will be products formed as a result of those reactions. Okay, so those are called as transformation products. So those transformation products will be different. Obviously it will be different for aerobic reactions as well as anaerobic reactions. Okay, and if you can look in detail, actually you will see that, the processes involved, actually there are different types of processes also involved in the aerobic transformation of products and anaerobic transformation of products, and those processes involved for under aerobic and anaerobic will also be different, just like the difference in the transformation products. Okay, and mainly the products of aerobic degradation are carbon dioxide and water, and whereas the products of anaerobic degradation are carbon dioxide, water, methane, hydrogen, nitrogen, and several others too. Okay, so basically if we look in general and compare between aerobic and anaerobic, it is the rate of degradation will be more for aerobic reactions. Okay, but the more dominant reaction happening would be anaerobic reaction. Okay, and as I said, not all types of contaminants can be degraded by microorganisms. It is actually mostly hydrocarbons or organic compounds which can be degraded by microorganisms. Okay, now when I say hydrocarbon containing compounds, it can involve, especially there has been a lot of study, or there is actually a lot of knowledge already established on the microbial assimilation of compounds such as xylene and all. Okay, but still in general what we have seen is that it is the organic compounds which are easily degraded by the microorganisms. Okay, so this is one biological transformation is one reaction that will be favorable for us, and it is carried out by the microorganisms present in the environment. Okay, and as said, it mostly the organic compounds are degraded by these microorganisms, either under aerobic or anaerobic condition. Okay, now so far we have seen the three types of mechanisms, that is sorption, radioactive decay, and biological transformation that occurs between the soil and the contaminants. Now the other reactions will be covered in our next video. Okay, so thank you.